All right. Hello, everyone. You are listening to the Blockchain Socialist Podcast. And for today's guests, I have Eric Annan. He is the founder of Aya, which is a platform with the mission to unlocking the potential in Africa by empowering them to build in Web3. So, Eric, we met, interestingly, at Zuzalu in Montenegro a few weeks ago. It was a really nice to get to know you, and I was really glad that you were there since you were able to, I guess, kind of represent, which is a difficult thing to do, of course, to represent, an entire group of people in a place like Zuzalu. But we had really interesting conversations, and I was really curious to get to know your perspective on crypto in Africa and how you see it, since that is a perspective that, of course, is like not often shared, especially for people who are in the West. They just don't know what is it like and what is the reality down there. So you can get people who have very wrong ideas about what it is like out there. And then especially when it comes to people who are building products that are meant for perhaps people also in Africa, I think they miss out on a lot. But Eric, if you want, could you maybe give a quick introduction to yourself? And yeah, explain a bit who you are. And I'm also curious to know about your experience at Zuzalu.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Josh, for this opportunity. It's quite interesting how we met. I think, just about 2 weeks to the end of Zuzalu. During the coordination, I was privileged to be a part of that, close group. And I think we had interesting conversation. Listening to your story, your presentation about Rujuvara, one of the platform places in I think in this country, Syria. It got me thinking, and that what brought me thinking about uh, the Ubuntu communism. And so, yeah, basically, my name's Eric. I'm a Ghanaian. I tell people I'm Ghanaian by birth and African by identity. I've lived and grown in Africa, have the privilege of traveling across 17 African countries. I work in a global company called Huawei briefly, and I hesitated to start building startup because I believe that my continent need to leverage technology to leapfrog and be able to accelerate development in terms of human development, because my continent is a very young continent, and it's going to be the youngest, even more younger as time comes. And we're going to have, by the end of the century, for example, every five people you meet, three of them will be someone like me, black person, by the end of the century. So there's a need for us to kind of speed up our adoption of technology and empowering our young people to have transferable skill, because that's where the center of attraction is going to be, not more about the physical infrastructure that we believe you should have, like we have in China, in the US, or in Canada, or in Europe. I believe that the next phase of human development, societal development, is going to be in people. So basically, that's me. I'm optimist. I'm very a believer of long term. I'm a visionary. I wake up every day thinking of what next. Why shouldn't you do this? So it's not. I don't wake up believing that I should be entitled to things that I've not worked for. I believe in meritocracy. I'm a very strong believer of meritocracy. I'm a strong believer of honesty. I'm a strong believer. So if you think about it, then think of the Singapore pillar, the pillars of Singapore, which built on four key pillars: meritocracy, pragmatism, and honesty. They call it MPH. I'm a strong advocate for that. And I think it's something that if I have the opportunity one day to lead any country in Africa, I will be using those pillars, because we need to really, 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 really build society that have a strong moral quotient, strong moral quotient. Rather than we don't care how you do it, all we care is that the result. So everybody's clamoring for those who have money. I think that money should be something that really drive us to make me part of life, the lives of people. So basically, that's all about me, and I'm happy to meet you in Zuzalu. It was fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious if you can talk maybe a bit more about your experience at Zuzalu and what was it like? Were there things that you were pleasantly surprised by when you were there, or were there things that like you think people were still missing, or what? I don't know. I'm just curious. Like, I imagine you must have had interesting conversations with people who probably knew very little about the context in Africa. So I'm curious, yeah, if you can speak a bit about that.
Yeah, so Zuzalu was an interesting one, right? So I happened to be in Zuzalu by pace of happenstance, and so I, I always tell people that I don't believe in accidents, right? I don't believe in coincidence. So last year, when we started AYA, our mission was very simple to unlock opportunity for African talent. We had opportunity to get an investor from China who has understand of the African context, and he was actually wrote up one of our first check. He was the second person who invested in us. So he introduced me to one amazing Chinese lady who lives in the US and worked with Consensus. And I mean, I'll mention her name. Her name is Xuyao. And so Jerry introduced us to Xiao, and we got onto Telegram. We had a chat. She was like, wow, you have a lot of insights about this. I just like your project. So early this year, January, I was there when she sent me a message. Hey, Eric, would you mind to be part of something that Vitalik is planning to have? It's called Zuzalu. It's going to happen in Montenegro from 25th March to the 25th of May. It's a pop-up city, and would you want to? In fact, he's much interested to have some startup founders from Africa. And I talked about you. Would you want to go? I mean, attend? I said, why not? I'm always about why not. So that's how I got to even hear about Zuzalu. So through Jerry, I got to meet, know Xiao, and Xiao getting to know about Zuzalu immediately thought about me. So just a minute, Josh, just a minute for a moment. I didn't know this lady.
Sure.
There's no way I was going to be part of Zuzalu, right? So this was all about having the right network of people and being very consistent, being honest. And we had a call, and she introduced me to Nicole, who happened to be one of the organizers of Zuzalu. And then Nicole, like, wow, you have to be here. And connected me to Vitalik, and Vitalik visited Ghana in February. I met Vitalik in Ghana, and that's how I got to Zuzalu. Unfortunately, a lot of people that were invited from Africa couldn't attend it because they couldn't access the visa to attend. I happened to be able to go there because I had just got my US visa. For the first time, I just got my US O1 visa. So the O1 visa, took me to the US to complete our Techstars. So my startup has already been accepted into Techstars Boston. So I was going to the US to complete the program. And immediately after the program, I now flew to Zuzalu on the 11th of March, on the 11th of April, sorry, to be part of the Zuzalu experience. And it's been really, really something I will never forget, the experience. So going to Zuzalu for me, I had only two goals. The goal was very simple. Learn as much as I can learn from the best of my. Imagine staying in one place with Vitalik for 30 days. Just imagine that. As an African founder, it's not a privilege I found myself having, but it was a real time opportunity to see how much I can accumulate in terms of knowledge to bring it back to my continent and implement it. Imagine being in the same place with the co-founder of Optimism, Ben Jones. Imagine being in the same apartment with the co-founder of Global, Liam. Imagine being in the same room with the co-founder of Gitcoin. And the like, it gives you opportunity to ask the right questions. It gives you opportunity to be vulnerable, to learn. And so my goal in Zuzalu was not go there and then be pitching everybody, selling Aya. And I didn't try to sell Aya. In fact, I didn't even sell Aya. It was for me that it's an opportunity that I would have had. And therefore, how do I contribute value? So how do I contribute value to Zuzalu? How much can I learn from great minds that have gathered there? And I tell you, the experience still live with me. I'm trying to even suppress myself, so that I don't push all the knowledge I have accumulated from Zuzalu to people. So when I'm speaking to a lot of people, I try to kind of calm down because if I don't take it, I'll even confuse people because there's so much I accumulated in 2 months that I've not even, explored 1% of it. And even the little that I've shared, I've seen the result of it. For example, in 2 months in Zuzalu, one of the surprising things I discovered was a hack, a growth hack that I learned. Just imagine in 2 months, Jessie, the lady that did the hackathon, did over 75 projects in 2 months. Look, Africa had the younger population that are curious to do this, but we didn't even understand that it's one thing to have the skill, but it's another thing to apply the skill. So that's one of the key secret I learned in Zuzalu. And since I came, we changed the entire approach of Aya and even sharing it with the other founders that look, if we don't begin to let our young people hack, continue to build on their skill, it will be difficult for them to actually have global opportunities and be part of Ethereum, contributors, be part of Coinbase, be part of Optimism, be part of Bitcoin, and all these amazing protocols out there. It's all boils down to hacking. And guess what? In just less than a month, one of our alumni who went through our training has already won a hackathon with Polygon Lab. Just imagine, and it was $7,000 because of the thinking that look, it's about hacking. You need to continue to build. So that is one of the amazing experience I've had. Bringing that an ideology of hacking, builder mindset has changed a lot for us. In Aya, not for only Aya, but other counterparts that we have, other partners that we have, for example, like Web3 Bridge guys. We just established Ghana Blockchain Association of Ghana. It has never been done. We just set up Blockchain Association of Ghana. And the Blockchain Association of Ghana, our mandate is very simple. Do grassroots mobilization of builders and hackers across the country. And that's for us is the goal. It's not talk shop, come conferences. I'm not interested in conferences no more. I'm interested in hackathons, helping young people acquire the skill and so that they can be able to build innovation. We need to have more innovators in Africa so that they can be able to use the technology for the good of humanity because we need the blockchain more than any other person may think of. Thank you.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that. I think, it was what I found really interesting. You mentioned earlier that they wanted to have more Africans come to Zuzalu, but the visa situation kind of messed that whole thing up. And it sounds like you and probably a few others from Africa who were able to come were because they had maybe some kind of connection to the US or connection to maybe some sort of other Western country that allowed them to get into Montenegro. I found that like very unfortunate that happened. And like, yeah, I imagine for you, that's got to be like quite a bit of pressure to feel, being that like, oh shit, like very luckily was able to come because of all of these. At the same time, it is a bit, I don't know, it was like a very real instance of what I would consider to be like, what do you want to call it? Like, I'm not sure if it would be imperialism or just like some form of like systemic racism at like the global level, like clearly is still there and it's enforced through like these like immigration laws, of course. And I don't know, it was something that was like very, very real. But I was wondering if you had any thoughts based on that experience. Like, was there anything that you felt that, or actually, no, I'd rather ask this question first. What do you think people kind of generally miss about Africa when it comes to its relation to crypto?
Yeah, thank you, Jeff, for this question. So I think one of the major things people gloss over when it comes to crypto, like it is said, so people have this misconception that blockchain is crypto, largely. The reason being that earlier on, between 2016, 17, 18, 19, a lot of these crypto projects end up to be very fraud, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of Africans who got into it really got burned. I got burned severally. I lost a ton of my savings
Wow.
through crypto scams. But one thing that kept me going was that I knew, number one, that innovations take time to settle. And I knew the more I got to know about crypto and blockchain, I realized that look, this is the solution that is going to help us solve three critical challenges. Number one, is Africa is a 54 countries. It's not Africa is not a country. It's 54 countries, and it's a vast land, a land of plenty, abundance. We have 1.4 billion people, the same people you have in China. But what is working for China is that China is largely homogeneous. Largely, I'm not saying it's homogeneous, but largely, China is a kind of a homogeneous setup. So you have China, the yuan, and you can transact with everybody without thinking about different currency. If you go to the US, you have the dollar, and all the states use the dollar, one market. So if you're an entrepreneur in the US, you do not have to think about other currencies. You think about the US dollar. But in Africa, for example, if I'm in Ghana, for example, I cannot easily transact with somebody who is my neighbor in Togo, which is just about 4 hours drive, 6 hours drive. I cannot do the same thing with my neighbor in Nigeria, who is just about less than an hour flight from Accra to Lagos. So that challenge of payment, and we have an economy that is largely driven by foreign economy, I mean, policies. So Africa is driven by dollar, the euro, and other things. So one thing that crypto has done for us, especially the stable coin, is enabling us unlock the layer of payment. So today, I can use stablecoin, which was not possible 10 years ago. If I needed to send even $10 to somebody in Kenya, and it has to go through, hit a US account before it come back to Kenya. Today, the story has changed. With crypto, I'm able to send within a second, and the person receives it indirectly. Number two, enabling us to unlock trade among Africa. And so, what people don't know about the West, they don't know a lot about Africa when it comes to crypto, is that they think that crypto is a trading, or crypto is just an investment tool, just as they know of in the US. Because people use crypto in the US just for investment, ETF, speculation. It's not really solving a payment issue. But in Africa, crypto is not an investment tool. It is a payment wheel. It's helping us connect 54 countries together. It helps us connect 1.4 billion people to trade among themselves seamlessly. That was never made possible in the last 10 decade ago. But now it's possible. And that's one thing that people are lacking, comparing Africa use cases to the West use cases, because crypto is not really solve any problem in the West, the global North. Crypto is solving a major problem in the global South, because most parts in Africa, paper and other financial tools don't work. You cannot even access them. And so people now able to have financial record, financial history, able to participate in the global economy through crypto. And therefore, the use cases are parallel. They are not the same. And therefore, there's a more need for crypto in Africa, more than you think of in the West. Unfortunately, because the technology largely is being, and we have a lot more funding from the West, they dictate how crypto should be used in Africa. And that's what the kind of imbalance we have, because all these protocols are not from Africa. All these protocols are either from the Asia, or from the US, or from Europe. And therefore, the same philosophy of capitalism is still driving the use of crypto, this technology that supposedly supposed to kind of connect the world together. It's a decentralized, it's freedom, it's permissionless. Unfortunately, because we still see it as a way to make money, we are still being driven by the same philosophy the Western world has used in the last 1 century or so.
Yeah. I'm curious, like, one of the things that I think I can hear kind of people responding to when you describe the situation in Africa, I think a lot of people, I think it's like, I'm extremely sympathetic with the struggles there, and that the fact that, like, essentially, I mean, Europe carved out Africa in almost like arbitrary borders that were created based on previous colonial where those colonies used to lie before, which don't align with kind of like the historical ethnic groups that were existing in those places in the first hand. So it's created this situation where things are very fragmented. People who are maybe part of the same ethnic group could be in one or several other countries, and maybe they still have a relation and they want to send money, but because they're in a different country, you have to go. And then of course, like the financial structure was built by either Europeans or Americans, who then like force you to have to like send something that has to go through an American bank account before it can go to another country, or to a French bank account before it go to another country. And then they take, of course, like a cut of that, therefore like permanently like putting these countries into just like extracting more wealth than they already have by this point from these countries. One like a big part of the problem to me seems that it's a very political problem. It's like a huge political thing, and it's of course not an easy problem to solve. I'm just curious for you, like how do you see this relationship with the political issues and the technology with crypto? Because some people may argue that, oh well, crypto is just a band-aid to the solution, right? That like it's solely letting you it's like not solving the problem, but it's it's a band-aid. Yeah, it's not getting to the root. How do you feel about those type of things?
Yeah, I'll be very, very direct on this one,
Sure.
right? I think use a template for over 100 years. And that template today is obsolete, totally obsolete. It's no more working. In fact, if the world is not paying attention, COVID taught us one thing. COVID taught us one thing, that we are all connected by virtue of all of us being vulnerable. And therefore, I think it's time that the West begin to kind of update their system, right? So talking about, for example, the borders we have, it should it should not be difficult for Africans ourselves, for example, to say, look, we have used these borders for over 100 years. It's actually not helping our own people. Just by way of an order, we have African Union. Let's remove all this border. We don't need UN to be ready to give us, the go ahead. We don't need America's CIA or whatever or whoever in America to give us to say, look, we are Africans. With no more borders. Anybody can travel across Africa. That's number one. We need to solve that problem for ourselves. That political thing, I know it's political. I know Africa is not connected. Africa is not united because France has its own interest in Africa. America has its own interest in Africa. Today we have the Eastern Bloc, China, Russia. They also, building a strong interest in Africa. Now the point is, Europe consumers have their own interest in Africa. Everybody have a plan for Africa, but only Africans don't have a plan for Africa.
Yeah.
And that's a sad thing. All right, everybody else have a plan for Africa except Africans having a plan for Africa. And we wake up and then we crying. Oh, Africans, we need repatriation. We need this. Look, I've come to one conclusion, that we don't need to continue to cry for the wrongs of the past. We should be very wise to say, look, for the interest of the young people of this continent, we are going to do A, B, C, D. Number one is removing all these artificial borders in Africa. And we don't need UN to do this. We have to solve that one first. Now, on the second part of it, the West thing that they are doing this thing, they continue to use old mentality of the old, divide and rule. Game theory to depress Africa, to suppress Africa. Look, you're not suppressing Africa for no. In fact, as of today, I know that whatever is happening today, everyone's going to suffer for it. Because whether we like it or not, the population of the West is declining, right? It's declining, and they can't do anything about it because that's how the society has become. Africa is the last and the largest opportunity the West has, and therefore, and the youngest continent. The only thing we can do to ourselves is a win-win. This one is, I'm giving it for free. It's a win-win. Look, the West will benefit more. The West, the East, everybody else will benefit more if they liberalize their obsolete, archaic immigration policies. It doesn't make sense, for example, a young African who did not ask God or the Creator to bring him to Africa, talented, smart, and being restricted because his leadership, his political leadership has failed to create economic opportunity for him to travel. With blockchain technology today, mobility should be a matter of human rights. I should be able to travel based on my personal record. Instead of spending billions of dollars to combat crime, why should we reward good behavior, for example? And what do I mean by good behavior? Good behavior in the sense that today, anything that you want from me, Josh, by the stroke of the internet, you can find everything I have done in the last 10 years. Why should we begin to think, okay, Eric wants to travel to Spain. What has Eric done in the last 10 years? We match it both positive and negative, and if the negative outweigh the positive, this guy does not qualify to come here. It shouldn't be based on my passport. I think the world, if you reward good behavior, the world will save more money, and you can channel those money that we use to kind of combat crime. Because everybody will say, okay, I need to put up a good behavior to be able to travel. Because now travel is not based on my passport. Travel is based on my good behavior, my talent I have, my skills I have, the value I can create, and therefore, anybody anywhere should be able to move freely. And freedom of movement enables us to create more opportunities, be more productive. And I say, the people that are going to build the world that we have today is going to be young Africans. And therefore, if you deny them access to travel, to kind of connect with other people, I don't need to stay in America for my entire life. I just want to be in America for 2 days, maybe 1 month, 2 months, meet Josh, go to Spain, meet Josh, exchange knowledge and come back and implement in my continent. In fact, I have a lot of young people who says, I don't want to go to America. I just want to go for vacation, understand their system, come back and implement. And that's how the world is going. And therefore, I think that the political issue, we Africans have to solve Africa. We need to have a plan for our own continent because everybody else have a plan for Africa, except Africans have a plan for Africa. And the more we do this, the more we kind of incentivize the West to continue to use old system to suppress the continent. But the moment we say, look, nobody needs visa to travel across Africa, the West begin to change their own plan because if you don't solve, it's charity begin at home. If you are not doing this, you don't expect America to change their travel policy. You don't expect UK to change their because you yourself you're still using the system that they gave you. They know that it's not working for you, and you're still holding on to it and then creating division, making your people struggle because you think that that's the only way to protect your people. Nobody's protecting nobody because at the end of the day, when there's a massive unemployment in Africa because the country is growing at an alarming rate, not only will it affect Africans, but it also affects the planning of UN. It also affects the planning of America. It also affects the planning of Europe. And therefore, who win? Everybody loses. And therefore, I think I put to the world that, look, let's begin to rework our old policies and then begin to look at how can we solve the problem of access? How can we help young people access global opportunities, have access to information that will help them improve their livelihood and be able to create economic need. I'm not interested in the gold oil thing. I think the technology is here to help everybody, and African young people are more than happy to work in Africa for global company without even a need for them to travel out of the continent. Because we want to eat our food, we want to enjoy our Afrobeats. All we need access to global opportunities while staying in Africa, so we can be able to contribute to the global economy and the internet economy. I believe that's the way to go in the future.
Right. So it sounds like you're very pro African Union, and sort of tearing down African borders as they exist. And for you, I guess these tools, blockchain, crypto, are tools to begin to almost practice the possibility of an Africa which does not have borders, an Africa that does not suffer from, the issues that it suffers from.
Absolutely. I think blockchain, crypto is one key technology tool. You know why it's so essential and why I'm so passionate about blockchain. Of all the innovation that I've seen come, the early days of the internet, the second phase of the internet, social media, everything was centralized, kind of. But the blockchain and the future of the internet is looking like more like a decentralized tools. And it has more of no permission. You don't need, nobody owns the patent. And therefore, it provides an opportunity to kind of leapfrog a lot of the processes. And one thing that all the innovation that we have seen never did was the issue of ability to have a decentralized form of payment. And blockchain provides us that. And that's why I believe blockchain, crypto, provide us a unique opportunity to define our economic structure in Africa. For example, we are able to, with the blockchain, we can tokenize all our assets. Africa controls 65% of the global supply chain in terms of raw materials. Why shouldn't we tokenize gold in Ghana and then mobilize the capital, and then we mine the gold ourselves, refine it, and then sell the end product. Why shouldn't we tokenize cobalt in DRC? Such that we can mobilize the capital needed so that we can mine the cobalt in Africa, bring all the equipment, and bring the expertise in Africa, mine it, and then sell to Apple, sell to Tesla, instead of just mining the raw material, taking it out there, and then selling us Apple phone for $1,500, Tesla, and then we just get a portion of it. I think the blockchain provide a unique opportunity for Africa to create real value, not the country that just have $4 trillion GDP. And you see China, $19 trillion GDP. America, almost $20 trillion GDP. Meanwhile, 65% of real value is in Africa. I believe blockchain provides that opportunity. And we don't need to wait for IMF or World Bank to say, oh, the way to go is blockchain before Africans, leadership in Africa, policymakers in Africa begin to see the technology as a way to kind of create a new economic incentive, a new opportunity for young people to be innovators, to create this solution for us. Because we understand our continent. We understand our precarious problem that we have. And we can actually solve this problem through collaboration. And I'm not saying that it should be African affair. I'm saying that we believe that the future is about collaboration. I believe the future is collaboration between the West and the East, everybody, because it's not about you must lose and we must win. I don't believe in that. I believe that the future of the world, the sanctity of this world that we have today is about collaboration. And Africa is the last continent to actually make good use of its resources that we have had. It has been exploited for years. Still, we still have a lot, even not tapped. The next phase is that how do we collaborate to ensure that value is created, redistributed, and accumulated in Africa, so that the people of Africa can also enjoy economic livelihood. The issue boiled down to economics. It's not politics. In fact, the politics is less. Until you solve the economic matters, the political issues will continue to be like the bigger thing. When China saw that, China got that secret 50 years ago, and they decided to solve the economic matters before political. Now they are now fighting the political to actually have a position. They didn't actually start with the political; they started with economics. And I think that Africa, we had it wrong by fighting for economic freedom. Instead, we should have fought for economic freedom first. Then, when we have enough, we can now begin to assess our economic strengths. But now we fought for political. And now the economy is bad, and now we cannot even our political freedom is even in question, right? And I see that happening in Saudi Arabia. They have solved the economic power. They have the economic power now. They are now asserting as other parts, subtly asserting the authority politically. And that's one of the things that we didn't get right. And I think that the future for Africa is to concentrate back to economic matters. Is the most important thing to solve in society, not politics.
Hi, everyone. If you're enjoying this episode so far, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, share with a friend, and join the crypto leftist communities on Discord or Reddit, which you can find links to in the show notes. If you're enjoying the episode or find the content I make important, you can pitch into my efforts starting at $3 a month on patreon.com/theblockchainsocialist to help me out and join the nearly 100 other patrons that contribute financially, which really helps since making this stuff isn't free in terms of money or time. As a patron, you'll get a shout out on an episode and access to bonus content like Q&A episodes where you can submit and vote on questions you'd like me to answer, and I'll give my thoughts in roughly 20 minutes. The current bonus episodes have so far explored plenty of topics, including how co-ops and DAOs relate, whether there is a socialist blockchain, a review of previous crypto events I've been to, and recently a video reaction to an episode of the Deprogram. Of course, I'll still be making free content like this episode to help spread the message that blockchain doesn't need to be used to further entrench capitalist exploitation if we put our efforts into it. So if that message resonates with you, I hope you'll consider helping out. One of the things that I think would be interesting to hear from you as well is if you can give us just like a picture of like the reality on the ground in places like Nigeria or Ghana as well, where the use of crypto is very high. I think Nigeria is the country with like the most cryptocurrency use in any other country in the world. It has a huge population. There's a lot of people in Nigeria. And from what I understand, it's not uncommon for you to walk around and see people like using cryptocurrency, or for people like booths with cryptocurrency in it, which to some people maybe in certain parts of the West like never get to see or have not seen before.
Yes, I think so. One of the reasons why Nigeria has a lot of people using crypto is, I mean, naturally Nigerians are very entrepreneurial, and when they see something, they really want to test it. And so you have a very dynamic young population in Nigeria, and they also have huge population. Nigeria, more than 200 million people, and so and they had some challenge with their currencies. I mean, your local currency cannot do more than $100 at a point. You cannot even transact more than $20 on your card. Therefore, the only opportunity they have it was to use crypto, all right, as a means of payment, paying for their suppliers in China. I mean, it's heavily import-driven society. So that was one.
The Naira has like heavy capital controls.
Exactly. And so that was one of those factors. And there were a lot of, I mean, regulatory impediments in the way of the central bank. So the last 8 years, the reason why we have seen a lot of drive for crypto adoption in Nigeria was because people still needed to transact. People still needed to be part of the global economy. They still needed to pay their school fees. They still needed to send money to their family and friends. And their local currency card, bank card cannot do that, support that. And the only option was crypto. That's why I previously said crypto go beyond trading. Crypto in Africa go beyond ETF or speculation. Crypto in Africa is solving problems that has never been solved in the last 100 years. And crypto has helped a lot of Africans be part of the global financial system, to be able to afford whatever they want to afford, to be able to pay for whatever, because we are import driven largely. We import almost everything in Africa. And the dollar cannot continue to be so. The easier way to do is to use my local currency, buy USDT on a peer-to-peer network, and able to do the next part with anybody in the world. So that's one of the key drivers. And on top of that, Nigeria has a huge young people with the skill. And therefore, most of these blockchain projects were being built by Nigerian talent. And so it's just suffice to say, it's important for this blockchain foundations and protocols to really deploy a lot more resources into the country that is really kind of expanding their reach in terms of utility, in terms of usability, and in terms of adoption. Africa has proven to be the real use case for crypto and blockchain. Why shouldn't there be enough commensurate response in terms of investment, in terms of support, in terms of deploying events? Why shouldn't there be, for example, it global in Africa? Why shouldn't, for example, there be DevCom in Africa? Why should there be DevConnect in Africa? Why shouldn't there be, for example, consensus in Africa? Because, for example, MetaMask has one of their biggest markets in Africa, which is Nigeria. So if all these things are true, then it should not be so much to ask that we need to see your presence. Young people need to see, the likes of Vitalik on the continent more often. People need to see consensus, people behind consensus, people behind MetaMask, people behind Optimism, Coinbase in Africa. I think it's just right to ask that, look, we want to see people behind it. So it will inspire more young people to say, look, we can also do it. For me, that's how I see it. Because if I'm giving you enough for your product, why should there be difficulty to really bring those incentives down here to a place where it is really testing the usability, the utility, and the adoption of that technology?
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Now I think it'd be good I would love to talk to you about Aya. If you could explain this project that you've been working on. What are the current hurdles for those in Africa trying to learn more about getting involved in crypto and Africa? So what are the difficulties that you face being in Africa and getting involved in everything? And I guess if you can explain what Aya is, of course.
Yeah, thank you so much for this. So why we start Aya is I've been an entrepreneur. My first startup that we tried to build, we tried to solve the issue of payment in Africa. So our startup would solve the issue of payment. It would be a wallet that enable people to send money from one part to the other. It didn't work so well. And one of the lessons that we learned was that, look, why shouldn't you look at crypto from the different point? In fact, the builders of crypto or blockchain engineers in the world. Africa just have about 3% of the total builders in the world. So I and my team decided, look, we need to do something about this. We saw crypto from one point of view, just to use for payment. But what about we empowering the young people with the skill they need, become solidity engineers, ROS engineers, smart contract engineers, product designers, product builders, so that they can actually build solutions that can actually solve problem in Africa. Because my research, I found out that a lot of these projects are being built without the context of Africa. So, for example, you have a lot of people still using phones that are not smartphones, right? And therefore, if you build a wallet that do not communicate to a non-smartphone user, how would you get adoption? And that's what Aya came to be. And large again, we have a lot of talent who have skill, but they can't access jobs. In fact, in Africa, a survivor, you have to survive first. You have not solved the issue of food, clothing, shelter, and therefore every person who finishes school, you have the responsibility to get a job and take care of your siblings if you have, and take care of your parents. That's a major problem to have, right? Unlike the West, where young people finish school, at least you have some social safe nets. You have food bank in the US. If you don't have food, you can go to food bank and get food to eat. In Africa, you don't have that. So a lot of young people are going through a lot of challenges. But their skills sometimes is not also up to skill for enable them to do. When even they upskill, they don't even have access to this opportunity because they don't have the trust from the West to say, oh, I can actually hire this person to do this. And fortunately for us, COVID has actually re-democratized work, how work should be. Therefore, people don't now need to work remotely. And how do we scale remote work is for us to focus on Web3 because we know that Web3, everybody in Web2 is moving to Web3. So how do we become that layer to become that pioneer in Africa to train, at least our goal is to train 10,000 talent in Africa in the next 5 years to have smart contract capability, able to build smart contract products, be able to be designers, and that's the goal I is having. Not only to train them, but interestingly, we train and then we enable them to be hackers, builders, to continue to hack on product so they can be efficient, they can be smart, and be able to connect them to global opportunities. And that's the way for us, we believe crypto will have mass adoption because now we already solved the payment issue. We now need to think about the talent issue because if you don't have enough digital skill talent in Africa, it will be difficult for us to go to the next layer of the technology. And it will be also difficult to onboard a billion people, if not billion people, millions of people on this technology because it is really solving our own problem. And that's basically what Aya is trying to solve. And interestingly, we've seen some great successes so far. We've trained 66 people. We want to just train 50. We had 4,000 applications last year. We trained 66. Already, some of them have started winning hackathons with Polygon Labs and Cello across the world, which give us an incentive to even dig deeper. And recently, what we have started doing, we just launched a challenge in Aya called Aya Lab, where we throw out challenges for people to build solutions and we give them some incentive just for them to build. The goal is to build a massive developer community in Africa. And there's another one going on called Hack It Ghana, for example. We just started Hack It Ghana. The goal is to go to all the universities in Ghana, build clubs, build Ethereum Club, Coinbase Club, Polygon Club, Optimism Club, and among these students for them to have these challenges every day. So by the time they finish school, they already have practical experience to actually work on real projects. And that's the mission of Aya. For us, it's all about empowering Africa, connecting African talent to the world for them to come build this and support the growth of Web3 and crypto adoption and build a product that really, really solve African problem and then support the global market.
Right. So I think this links to kind of the thing that you were saying earlier about Africans being able to forge their own future, essentially, is how I guess I would put it. But it's, yeah, I guess one of the things that I fear about the introduction of blockchains and crypto, especially to the global south, is of course that like all these systems will be made by the same people who made the systems before, or the same types of people who made the systems before, and it just kind of like re-instantiates the same types of hierarchical power structures that are causing the problems in the first place. But then now it's like maybe there's like a veneer of like we're helping save you because the technology is new. Here, I think what you're saying is that crypto is already in Africa. It's solving problems for people here and they're using it, and there's probably likely not going to change anytime soon. So in order to not be like a victim of perhaps, because all these tools are being used by Africans, of them only being made by Westerners, for example, and then like causing more of the same problems, that instead, if Africans could learn how to create the tools themselves, then they can create the platforms, protocols, what have you, that would, theoretically help Africans be able to forge their own destiny in that regard. So Aya is about like giving people those skills to be able to do that.
Yeah, giving people the tool. I mean, instead of giving us fish, I think that we need to have the tools to be able to solve our problem. So you just summarize it. I mean, you are not saving us. The technology is good. I mean, it's a global technology. Everybody can use it. But now we're saying that, look, we can actually use the same technology and solve problems locally that can actually bring more people into the mainstream. And at the end of the day, it's a win-win, right? And so teaching people to be, builders, holding a tool on their hand to actually create their solution that they believe that will solve local problem. Because if you don't understand as a society, you can actually solve their problem for them. And how do we bring this tool to the hands of a lot of young people in the continent who are already young, agile, very resilient, and empower them with this tool to solve problems that ultimately increases the protocol adoption. Ultimately, look, it's a win-win. These guys are building that on Ethereum, on Polygon, on Optimism. It's increasing the network adoption ultimately. So it's not like, oh, if you empower African talent, they are going to take the technology away. No, it's a win-win. Therefore, we need to see it that way. The more you empower people to have the tool on their hands to build, the more the protocol owners also benefit from it. So it's a kind of a win-win. That's why I'm excited. Unlike the previous, where it's centralized, whatever you do, nobody care about you. This one, I need a tool. I'm building. I know you're going to benefit. I also know I'm so benefit because I'm so used to solve problems in my local setting. So it's kind of a beautiful future that I foresee us kind of collaborating more with this protocol, global protocol owners. But the focus should kind of change a bit instead of staying there and we don't care about what's happening here. Meanwhile, people are really using the technology down here. How do we change that and then bring it closer to the people?
Yeah, I get your reasoning. I wonder, have you thought about, or do you worry about perhaps what could happen, or how would you avoid perhaps extending the worst of what would be like the gig economy in Africa with this kind of setup? So like a lot of times, and we have this issue in the West as well. Like gig work tends to cheapen over time the work of people as they get going, and it creates worse and worse labor conditions over time. Do you have any thoughts on like how maybe to counter that?
Yeah, I think I'll be very honest with you. I think that when you want to get yourself organized, the goal initially is not to fight for equity. I believe in that. I think that we have everything on our side to prove that we can do it. Mm-hmm. That's why I talk about trust. Number one, trust. Now, number two, I having access to the right network of people to really give you opportunity to show proof of work. Number three is now we have gotten it. Now we have proven that we can do it. Now, can we talk about fair exchange, right? Mm-hmm. So our goal, our first 10-year goal is not to say, hey, because you're paying somebody in the US $120,000 or $250,000 for the same kind of work, pay somebody in Africa the same. Because look, let's be honest with ourselves. The economic situation, the standard of living, the cost of living is different in different geographical areas, right? So it will cost you somebody in New York about $4,000 to rent a studio apartment. It may not cost me the same to rent a studio apartment in Accra. So those things, I know it's a global thing, but for now, the first leg of our mission is to get more young people to have the skill. Mm. After they have the skill, the next thing is that to open them up to this opportunity for them to build, solve these problems in real time so that they can become efficient. When they become efficient, they begin to be innovators and build projects. The next layer is to unlock capital for them. And unlocking capital for them means that they can now be able to employ people locally who have the skill, and there will not be a challenge of finding the right talent to help you scale your innovation or your startup. That will be solved locally. And therefore, the next thing is that they can stay in Ghana, anywhere in Africa, and still work with global companies. The goal is helping the global companies save costs and have access to quality talent outside their geographical locations. In terms of fair wages or thing, is something that I think it took Indians more than 30 years for them to become what they are today. But what they did was that, look, don't worry, bring everything to India, we'll help you solve it. And the whole tech moved to India, outsourced to India. And they didn't fight for fair wage. They just wanted to show the world that we can do it. And Indians have now achieved optimum. They have actually achieved global scale. Africa has not done this at that scale. We are seeing that we have, in fact, we have one of the most resilient and active young population that actually are eager to work and just get able to solve the three basic needs: food, shelter, clothing. Let's solve this thing first. Other part will come in the future, maybe 20 years from now, 30 years from now, after we have dead and gone, then we have achieved scale. At that point, people cannot begin to ask for, look, now we need, more remuneration, better remuneration, the same standard we have in China, because now we have built economy that is scalable, systems are working, and people don't need to travel to India no more, or China no more, or in America. They are staying in Africa. The economy is robust. Cost of living has increased, and therefore they need to have better remuneration. At this stage, we need to solve the basics first: food, shelter, clothing, and access. When we have access, I think it's enough for us not to for us not to call for aid, not to for anybody give us aid. Africa don't need aid. Africa needs investment in the young people. The aid is not working. It's never going to work. The top-down approach is never going to work. Let's now begin to do bottom up. Let's empower the young people. If you empower the young people, what it does two things. They are not going to cross the Mediterranean Sea to die. Therefore, now you cannot set up an NGO. Oh, let's now solve the issue of the Mediterranean crossbar. We don't need that. Let's solve the problem now so that nobody will travel through the Mediterranean Sea. Because when they have food, they have shelter, they have clothing, they're not thinking about traveling out of the continent. They are thinking about how do I have skill to be able to support global companies working for them remotely.
Fair. So one of the things that we spoke about when we were together at Zuzalu was what you called the Communism of Ubuntu, which was, I thought was a super interesting concept that you sort of introduced during our workshops, and we spoke about a bit. But do you want to speak about what is the communism of Ubuntu?
It's very simple, right? So Africa is largely a communal society. Africa is largely more like community oriented. That has been our DNA, right? Africa is more of you are because I am. We are together. So I'll give an example. So for example, if an African man, typical African man, buys a gun, Josh, his first instinct is not to say, hey, you are my property. Get out of it, I'll shoot you. When an African man has a gun, for example, his instinct is to protect his neighbors. The only time you want to use the gun against his community is when the community rises against him. But the reverse is true. In the West, if I have a gun, Josh, and I step on your land, the next thing tells me, hey, get out of here, or I'll shoot you. And indeed, you're going to shoot me because there's zero empathy. Everything is calculated as numbers, right? Everything's quantified. We don't have that compassion of one another. Africa has practiced Ubuntu for centuries. It's unfortunate that it's largely wiping out of a society. But I brought it up in the conversation because I realized that we're having a conversation that is seeking to kind of solve a non-existing problem. And therefore, if you have some non-existing problem, you're only saying that you're coming with the same ego and saying that everything's fine, forget everything, and let's see how we can continue to enjoy our privileges. But what Ubuntu does for the world is that we begin to look at the world from a bigger perspective, from a point of kindness, true humanity. Put the human at the center, because whether we like it or not, innovations are good, technologies are good, but no technology can work without compassion to the human being. And therefore, I bring up, and I'm asked the question: can we build a new world? Talk about network state, coordination, network cities, and using technology of all these things, and still do not solve basic things like mobility, food, shelter, clothing. If you're not talking about these things, and we are thinking, oh, the West, we have gotten to a point where we need to now rethink everything through a concept of capitalism, then I'm thinking that we are actually not reflecting. And that's why Ubuntu is key, because you are because I am, and I am because you are. Human beings, we have evolved. The only thing that is true about humanity is that humans are not static. Our story keep on getting better. Our ideology is getting better. But one thing that we are failing to do is that we are failing to be compassionate about the atrocity that we have caused to this world, to humanity. And if you don't do anything about it, by beginning to look at it from togetherness, community, there's high rate of mental health, high rate of depression because it's individualism. The West is individualism, it's
Yeah.
individual basis. As Africa, despite all the pains Africans go through, Josh, we don't wake up seeing mass depression, mass mental health cases because we are resilient, because we are in Ubuntu. You are because I am, and I am because you are. And I think we can scale this. We can export this to the global world. Everybody needs somebody. We all need each other. See, we don't need all these things that we have created to the world that is creating a division. And that's why the communism of Ubuntu is an old primary DNA of a typical African society that has been erased over the years. But going back to history, because I love what Steve Jobs said, he said you cannot create the future without connecting to the past. You mirror the past, bring it to the present, and able to kind of gauge the future. And I'm saying that we can actually mirror the past and say, how can we use technology to create an Ubuntu, communism of Ubuntu, where the human is at the center, everything's at the center. And at the end of the day, everybody wins. You can still make money, so much money. I'm not saying capitalism is not good, I'm a capitalist. But my kind of capitalism is the capitalism of empathy. I don't want to make, I'm a conscious capitalist. I don't want to make money at the expense of somebody's blood. I don't want to make money because at all costs I need to make money. I think that we can still make money, but we can still be morally upright and still create abundance. I still believe that we can still be consciously right and still make so much money. I don't believe that I need to make money so to beat somebody down to make money. And therefore, the current structure we have, I think is working okay, but we need to do something about it. And that's why the communism of Ubuntu is so critical in our conversation. Else, we are going to have something that we cannot all hold. I may be dead and gone, but I see a danger in the future where individualism will make the society just wipe off, but Africa will still maintain. And for us, because we know that we are very empathetic, we are very sympathetic, we are very compassionate, why shouldn't we have this kind of conversation so that we can make people aware and then change that? It's not right for people to be depressed. It's not right for people to go through mental because they are alone. They don't, after 18, go away. You are done. I don't care about you. Families are throwing out their children because you are 18 years. Go and find your own way. No, that's not how society should work. It's about us. Together we win. Together we can make more. Together we can create a new reality for humanity to exist. Together exist and coexist and co-multiply and co-create and co-share and make everybody happy.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that's perhaps a good place to end it. Thanks so much, Eric, for taking the time and sharing your perspective. I'm interested in continuing our conversations over time, of course. And yeah, I think I've learned a lot from you. And I hope the audience has as well gained a new perspective when it comes to Africa. But maybe just to end it off, do you want to share with people where they can keep up with you and your work?
Oh, thank you so much, Josh, for this opportunity. It's just a conversation. If I didn't have to sit down and plan what I was going to say, because I just wanted to have real conversation from my heart. And I hope I was able to share a bit of what I believe the world should look like in the next couple of years ahead of us. I'm very online. My name is Eric Annan. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter as E_Annan24. And of course, we are building a movement in Africa called AYA. AYA is empowering young Africans to be creators. And so our tagline is empowering Africa, transforming the world. Join us, let's make a difference. Join us, let's change the narrative where people want to travel out of Africa because they believe opportunities are outside. We want people to stay in Africa and support the world. We call it brain export. Join us on our mission to create a new reality where we export brain, not brain drain. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much.